Hello, my name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is about whether you should choose to save your money or invest your money. So we're going to run through some numbers on this, also run through some factors that might mean that you need to save your money rather than invest, and then see where we get to. So on this channel, I talk about all things personal finance, budgeting, and investing. So if that's something you're interested in, then please do subscribe to this channel to see more videos like this one. So I wanted to start this video with a little bit of a story about myself, just to explain where I'm coming from in terms of my saving and investing rationale. So once I finished university, I moved down to London and got my first job. And in that first job, I got a bonus of £3,000. And I've always been really careful with money. I paid off my overdraft that I had left over from university, paid off any debt and credit cards, so I could choose to do what I wanted with this £3,000. And because I was nervous about being in a situation when I didn't have any money, I basically chose to save that money. And I saved that money for 10 years and just left it in a savings account, making very little money. And then I chose to use that money when I needed it to do some training later on in life. Now that money was still worth the £3,000 basically that I'd put into the bank account to start with, but I hadn't made any interest on that money, really, no significant interest anyway. And although I had that money 10 years later, if I had chose to invest that money at that young age, instead of holding on to it for 10 years, then I would have been in a much better financial situation. So I'm just going to run the numbers on that so that you can have a little look at that. So I'm going to go on to a compound interest calculator at the moment. I love a compound interest calculator. They're so useful for seeing, obviously, compounding interest. So I'm going to go on this. So this was 10 years ago that I had this £3,000. So let's put in £3,000. We're going to put in an interest rate of 9%. I've based that on the S&P 500 performance over the last 90 years is 9.8%, and I've dropped that down to 9% to account for fees that I probably would have paid in platform charges or fees that I would have paid for an index fund. So I'm basing it on 9%, although I have been investing in the last couple of years and have seen returns much higher than 9%. So one of the funds I invested in last year returned a performance of 119%. So much higher than that. But for the sake of this, and for the sake of looking at a younger me who wouldn't have known about investing in these different funds, if I just invested in an index fund 10 years ago, let's look at that. So 9%, oh, let's put that in, 9% over 10 years. So if we run those figures quickly, instead of just having £3,000 10 years later, I would have had, having put no extra money into that, I would have had £7,354.07. So the interest over 10 years that I could have gotten that if I just put it into a very basic S&P 500 index tracker, I would have made £4,354.07 just in interest alone. So I would have more than doubled my money in that 10 years. But instead what I did, because I was nervous about investing, I kind of had this idea that if you invest in the stock market, you're going to lose all your money. I didn't understand all the different terminology that was being used. I also thought that I would need to have a financial advisor and have significantly more money than £3,000 to be investing in the stock market or in index funds or in funds. So basically, holding on to that money, it was great. I still had that money. I was very cautious with my money, but I could have more than doubled that money in the 10 years. And then I could have done the training that I wanted to do, that I used the £3,000 for, and then maybe use the remaining money to go towards something like our deposit in our mortgage for our house. But instead, I had to work hard to save that money instead. So that's just a basic rundown of, I wouldn't call it a mistake, because I think everything is about learning, and I think that, you know, I was still really cautious with money, but I kind of wish someone had told me at that time, you don't need to save all this money, you can invest it or do something different with it, because I didn't necessarily need that money. It was a bonus. It wasn't money that I was expecting. It wasn't money that I needed from my monthly budget, because I was having my income obviously coming in. So yeah, I wish I had invested that money. So we should have a look at some figures and run some numbers for you guys. I also wanted to say that you probably know this already, but instead of investing or saving, the most important thing that you should be doing, if you have any debt, is paying that off first. So generally debt is at a much higher interest rate than your savings is ever going to get. If your debt is at something like 20%, which often credit cards are at the moment, or store cards, or any kind of debt like that, then you should be paying that off first before investing. The only debt that I don't do this with is our mortgage, because our mortgage interest rate is so low that actually we can see greater returns in the stock market and investing than we can with our mortgage interest rate. But if your debt is high, definitely pay off your debt first, and don't be looking to save or invest. The other thing that you should consider before investing is whether you need that money in the next 2 to 3 years. So if you're, for example, saving up for a wedding or saving up for a house, a deposit for a house, and you desperately know that you need that money in the next 2 to 3 years, then I would probably say that it's much better to save it than it is to invest. And that is just based on the fact that the stock market is so volatile. The last year, it's been a really, really volatile year because of coronavirus. We've seen the stock market fall and rise very quickly throughout the year. And you can't guarantee that in 1 year that you will see a positive performance, in 2 years that you will see a positive performance, or even in 3 years that you will. Generally, if you're leaving your money in for a longer amount of time, those peaks and troughs will level out, and overall your average should see a return over years. But if you really need your money in the next 1, 2, 3 years, then I would save it instead of investing it. So let's just have a quick look online at the absolute best interest rate that you can get for a savings account at the moment. In the UK, we're based. And let's just say we've got 5 years. So we're going to try and invest or save for 5 years. And let's say we're starting off with a realistic pot of money. So let's say we've just had Christmas, maybe you've got some money left over from Christmas, you've got 100 quid that you want to start either saving or investing. And then on a monthly basis, you're going to top that up by £100 every single month for 5 years. So let's just do a comparison on saving versus investing over those 5 years. As I said, I'm going to use the 9% figure because that is based on the S&P 500's performance over the last 90 years, minus what you might have to pay in different fees. But I have actually got a video on this channel where I talk about some funds that I've invested in that have had much, much higher returns. So they have returned in the last year between 50 and 119%. So if you want, I can link that video down below. So perhaps if you're looking at investing, you could have a look at different funds, not just index trackers, because some other funds can perform very well. Or you could also look at investing in the stock market, in stocks and shares. So I have a trading 212 account, and I also have a free trade account where I invest a small amount of money in individual stocks and shares. So I have £1,000 in my trading 212 account. I have more than that now because it's grown in the last few weeks. I'm going to do an update video on that. And then in my free trade account was just a small account just to see how the platform worked and if I liked it. So that account has £100 in it. So you could look at doing those options, but based on today's video and the figures, I'm going to use a 9% interest rate of return from the S&P 500. So let's have a quick look at the top savings accounts that you can get at the moment. So I have had a little look at the best available rates for interest rates on savings accounts, and there are some that are a little bit higher for fixed periods of around 3%, but the maximum that you can put into those is £50 a month. So if we're looking to do £100 a month, then they won't work for us. So the only accounts that I can see that could work for us are about 1.2% interest rate. So let's base those numbers on that. So we're starting off with £100 and we're going to invest £100 every month for 5 years. So let's run the figures on that. So we've got £100 to start off with, and then every single month we're going to put £100 either into a savings account or an investment account, and then we're going to compare that after 5 years. So perhaps this is a fund for saving for a wedding day, perhaps it's a fund for saving and buying your first house. Whatever it is, let's have a look at what we can do in 5 years. So starting off, looking at our compound interest calculator. So as I said, we're looking at an interest rate of around about 1.2% is the absolute best interest rate that I can see for savings accounts if we're wanting to put £100 in a month. Some of them might want you to fix your money in for a little bit longer, some might let you take them out. Obviously there's a lot of different savings accounts available, so definitely check those out. So we're going to put 1.2% yearly, and we're going to save for 5 years. And then we put our £100 in, and then what we're also going to do is we're going to pop an extra £100 in every month of our hard-earned money. So if we're doing that with a savings account after those 5 years with an interest rate of 1.2%, we will end up with a whopping £6,292. So £6,292.83. So really good, really positive. That could definitely go some way towards helping you put down a deposit on your first house. But if we were to run the figures again, but actually put in a 9% interest rate, and this is based on the S&P 500 performance over the last 90 years, as I said, minus certain fees. So let's put in a 9% and then see where that gets us to. And we're looking at getting £7,755.55. So £7,755.55. So just by choosing to invest rather than to save that money over the next 5 years, you're gaining a total of £1,462.72. So choosing to invest over 5 years versus saving for 5 years, you're getting an extra £1,462.72. So that's pretty good for doing very little. The reason I've said for doing very little is because I'm suggesting here that you put that money into an index tracker fund, which is something that realistically you put in there and you don't touch, you don't watch it, you don't change it around, because it's that time period, over a period of time, that you want to see that income grow, and you don't need to track it as such because it's just following the market. As an alternative, you could look at doing some investing yourself. You could look at funds that have performed a little bit better over the last few years. So I have, as I said, done a video on my best performing funds. Some of them have performed at 119%, some of them have performed at 50%, some of them have performed at 75% growth for just 1 year. But I think that it's been a particularly good year for investing for me personally, and I think that that kind of return is perhaps not a realistic number to be putting in here. I don't think it would be fair to put those kind of numbers in just in case you don't see those returns. But I think that you could potentially be looking at between a 15 and a 20% return by choosing and selecting different funds rather than going with an index tracker. So let's say you're seeing a 15% return over 5 years, because you've decided to do some investing yourself, you've decided to look at different funds, perhaps you've decided to invest in different stocks and shares, and you have a nice diverse portfolio and you want to see a 15% return. And let's say that you do see that over those 5 years. Then at that point, you would be looking at a final investment value of £9,178.89. So £9,178.89, which means that the total interest you've earned on that is £3,078.89, which means if you compare that to having put it in a savings account, you're looking at a total of £2,886.06 more than you would have seen if you'd put that same money into a savings account. And that is with a 15% return, which I don't think is unrealistic. I think that if you choose the right funds, choose the right stocks and shares, make sure you have a diverse portfolio and spend some time monitoring it, you could expect to see those kind of returns. I hope that you found this video really interesting. If you have found it interesting, then please do subscribe to this channel for more content like this. As I mentioned, have other videos on funds. I also have videos on my shares portfolios. So if you want to check those out, then have a look at other videos that I've produced here on this channel. I wish you all the very best with your saving or investing journey. Whatever you choose is right for you at this time, and I hope you get to where you want to be. Thank you so very much for watching. Have a lovely day now. Bye bye.